is time to talk technology with our regular tech expert, Matthew Dickerson. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning.
Making fun of my turtleneck before, just because I think 19 degrees is cool enough for a turtleneck. It seems unnaturally cruel.
Wait till it gets really cold here, Nick.
I have been here for one winter, and yes, I was not ready for it in any way, shape, or form. Anyone listening in Orange will laugh at me, but I'd never had frost on a windshield before. Coming from WA, I hopped in a car one winter morning, and I'm like, I got no idea what to do.
Someone's broken my windscreen.
What's meant to happen now? I just had no idea what to do. Let's talk technology. Let's talk garbage collection, because is that about to go high tech, is it?
Well, it has gone high tech in one council area in Australia at the moment, up in the Sunshine Coast. I'm not saying it's cheap. They spent $21 million in this solution for 6 kilometres. But I love the concept. So instead of the old-fashioned thing of having a wheelie bin you take out, or in a CBD area where you've got bins sitting there that someone comes along and empties out, they've got high-tech bins that you just drop the rubbish into as normal, but twice a day, it then drops underground into some large vacuum pipes and then gets sucked away into a central repository. Sounds fantastic. Sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie.
Sounds like Jetsons.
It does, doesn't it? Exactly right. So maybe someone was watching the Jetsons one night and they came up with this idea. But it's actually an overseas company that's got a number of sites around the world that was commissioned about 5 years ago. So it was 5 years ago this was announced. It's just about ready to actually start operation now. Love the idea of it, but I can see some problems just from a cost perspective. I mean, $21 million for 6 kilometres. Imagine retrofitting every suburb, every area, every town. Incredibly expensive. Although, when you're building a new development, I can see potentially this would be something that I might, as a developer, say, let's build this in. It's much cheaper when we're putting all the other pipes in. And it would be an advertising feature, I think, that you could use when you're selling an estate, for example.
I have to say, anyone who's ever tried to vacuum something up that's a little bit damp, we know that if it's, you can get stuff stuck to the side as a vacuum cleaner. How are they coping with these vacuum pipes? How are they making sure that the garbage, which will be a big mix of garbage, I imagine, isn't just gluing itself to the side?
So there's a couple of things. I mean, they've got large pipes for a start, so that's one part. So that it doesn't get things stuck in there. But there's some coatings that they've used, and we've talked about them before. In toilets, they're looking at some particularly slippery coatings on there. So the idea is that by coating the inside of the pipes with this sort of substance, then you're much less likely to get things stuck there. I still think that every now and again, someone would have to go along and organise a bit of cleaning.
Someone's going to have to, or some robot that goes through.
That's right. I'm not volunteering, okay?
Do you think this is going to take off? I mean, as you said, the cost is prohibitive, but that happens with any new technology, and costs come down. Could this be something we could see a little more commonly?
Yeah, again, I think really only in sort of new developments. A new apartment block, for example, fantastic. A new housing estate, I can see this being used. But when you've got to go and start digging up roads, when you've got already water, sewage, electricity, telecommunications, a whole range of things under the ground, you've got to work out where you can fit it for a start. Digging up roadways, footpaths, that gets expensive. So I don't see this being a big thing from a retrofitting perspective, but I really can see new developments considering this. If I'm struggling to sell blocks of land in a new development, I can think that this might be a way to put mine ahead of everyone else.
It'd certainly interest a few people, wouldn't it?
Yeah. So, and I mean, I use central vacuum cleaner around my house, for example. When we built our house, I put in the pipes for the central vacuum cleaner. I love that concept. So maybe there's a way you could actually link that sort of system through to this so that your vacuuming would go straight into some sort of repository. I'm dreaming now, Nick, but who knows?
That actually sounds amazing, because I've gone the robot vac, but they are not cheap, and I bought a bit of a mid-tier one instead of one of the very high-end ones, and basically 3 times a week it texts me to let me know it's stuck on something about half an hour after it started going. So that technology for me, maybe not quite where I wanted it to be.
Well, you've still got to empty them out. That's the problem with
that is the
robot
issue, and they have a tiny little hopper when it comes to that. Look, from garbage to paint, I know that we've seen some amazing technology for blacker paints, but are we looking at a whiter paint?
It just confuses me, Nick. I thought white was white. Who came up with white or white? So in October last year, some researchers came up with the whitest white paint.
The whitest white paint.
That was at 95.5% reflection, mainly of infrared heat, but also of light. But they've broken that now. They've come up with a whiter white paint at 98.1% reflective capabilities. And you might think, who cares? I look at white, it looks white to me. I look at a piece of paper, that's white. A ceiling, that looks white. But the reason they want to do this is that they can reflect more, in particular, of that infrared heat. It means if you're trying to cool a house, cool an office block, for example, you don't have as much heat coming in from the outside. Therefore, you don't need to spend as much money on the electricity to cool down the environment inside, which sounds great when you live in the Pilbara in WA. But what about when you live in Dubbo where it's hot in summer and then in winter you want heat coming in, so you don't want the heat reflected. So there is a blacker than black paint. Vanta Black is the blackest black paint, and it's up over 99% of absorption of light. So what I really want, Nick, is exactly right as you're indicating there, flipping your hands over. In summer, I want the whitest of white paint on my roof, and then in winter, I want that to flick over to the blackest of black paint. That's all I ask for, okay?
I'm a sucker for Vanta Black because I've never seen it in real life, but when I see photos of it, it looks like a Photoshop trick. It does not look real.
Yeah.
Vanta Black is amazing.
See, I would call your skivvy black, but you're right. When you see Vanta Black, it is blacker than black. It's quite incredible how it just seems to almost suck the light out of a room. So quite incredible. But there you go. Next time you're asking for your house to be painted, just say to the painter, do you have a whiter than white paint or a blacker than black black?
And make sure I'm not wearing a skivvy when I do it, apparently. Fine. Look, we are talking a lot of green energy at the moment. And, we're talking a lot about what it's going to mean for the environment. But there's been a question about whether those new applications of green energy can be good for the economy as well.
Yeah, and this is a question that we're not going to answer in the next 3 minutes.
No.
But certainly I think, a lot of our economy is based around coal, a lot of our economy is based around burning things, but certainly the opposition has come out with a roadmap to the future with clean energy. And I think it's a sensible thing to do because eventually we will run out of stuff to dig up, and eventually the rest of the world will say, we don't want to buy your coal anymore, and then what does Australia do? So having a whole economy based around that is bad, but there's a proposal put forward by the opposition that says there's about $15 billion in an economy of green energy. And we're talking about renewables, we're talking about the ability to have EVs. I mean, potentially you can have manufacturing here, you can have solar panels here. I even think of the idea, Nick, we've just got so much land area, having solar panels generate electricity and then exporting electricity, that sounds like a really good industry going forward. So there's a whole range of different industries, but I think we've just got to get our head wrapped around the fact that clean energy is not necessarily costing the economy money. We've got to look to the future and say we need to make sure we're almost arming ourselves for the future.
Perspective and taking a business case attitude towards it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And sometimes it might be a medium or long-term business case rather than a short-term. And I think we're seeing that with electricity prices. Some people say, oh no, renewables, that makes electricity more expensive. But when you think of the infrastructure, putting in, say, wind turbines or solar panels, but then you're not feeding it every year, you're letting nature feed it. So it's not like a coal-fired power plant you've got to keep putting money into. So upfront costs more, but over the life of that wind farm or a solar farm, I think you're getting to the stage where you're getting much cheaper electricity.
It's also about changing the way we think about these things to a degree. I know, a couple of years ago, some of the big discussions around electric vehicles, EVs, was roads are going to go into disrepair because people aren't buying petrol. Where's the money coming from to fix those? And of course, the money's going to be there. It's just got to be, we've just got to think about it in a different way.
Yeah, that's right. And let's face it, since the beginning of time, the beginning of man's time, we've changed things, we've modified, we've adapted, and that's what we're going to be doing in this scenario. Some people wanted to stick to the way it is because it's comfortable now, but things are going to change and we just have to adapt to that.
Matthew Dickerson, we'll talk again soon.
Thanks, mate.
Matthew Dickerson is our regular tech expert. We are not that far away from 10 o'clock news. Sneak in a little Brad Butcher. This is I'm All In.